Okay. Today we begin Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and just to very briefly just go over what's very important is you don't think and read on chance. What you do is you have a checklist. So therefore, you don't have to worry about missing something. And that's very critical to have a checklist. But the most important aspects of a halacha, 6 of them. We know what a halacha is, right? We know what the definition of a halacha is. Mm-hmm. What's the definition? Anybody know?
Halacha is a required way for one to, what's the right word? Behave?
Conduct.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Required conduct in a particular situation.
Yeah, the required behavior in a given situation. That's what it is. Okay? It's amazing how many people get that wrong. They'll leave out one of the two. You know. But a required behavior in a given situation is a halacha. Good. Therefore, the main ideas in a halacha that you're looking for is 1, the case, the situation. 2, the conduct, which is the din. What is the required behavior? Right? In this situation, what do I have to do? Right? 3rd idea is the principle. Why is this the conduct, the din, in this situation? That's the concept called the principle. Very important idea. 4th idea is who is the author of this? Yehuda, Rameya, and so on. 5th idea is what's your authority? Is it min ha-Torah or midrabanan? Right? Very important to know. And those are all basically analytical questions.
Why do you know who the author is? Is it a Choshevi? Who cares who it is?
You mean who cares who's the author?
Yeah.
Because you want to see consistency.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see if Rabbi Yehuda is the author of this halacha and Rabbi Yehuda is the author of another halacha.
And if not, so
are they internally consistent?
So what?
So what?
Yeah.
I don't want to remember. So
They
what?
have a reason-
Why is that not important?
They have a reason for being inconsistent.
No, so then you have to find out.
Mm-hmm.
No, but if you didn't know who the author was, there's no inconsistency. These are 2 different people. But now that you know it's the same person, so the question is, why is he inconsistent? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Why is he inconsistent? If it's the same person, is that illogical?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because, if you don't know who the author is, so you say it's 2 different people. But if they're inconsistent, whether it be in the conduct, 2 different dinim, or the different principles, which seemingly is the same halacha, you want to know what's going on here. Very important. It's very important to reach a conclusion about, what they're saying. And that's what Torah is all about. So we have, who?
Authority is also important to know because
Yeah,
whether or not it's something
Sure.
that has there's variation. If this must be in all cases abided by or not.
Well, anyway, you always have to know the authority because, first of all, there's always a difference between if it's according to the Torah, min ha-Torah, midrabanan, Suffolk. Suffolk midrabanan is the kulo, Suffolk min ha-Torah is the chumrah, right? If it's a doubt, hi. So you have case, conduct, principle, author, authority, very important, right? And the last thing, so those are analysis, that's to analyze something. What does analyze mean?
To break down.
To break an idea down into its components, right? That's analysis. To build up or to connect different things is called synthesis. So that is the area or the category. This halacha, where does it fit? In what overall category, right? Because a category will always organize many things as opposed to a single idea, So therefore the area, that's basically it. Although last week I mentioned more ideas, but that's basically it. Okay? Good. Now, Mishna, what are the objectives to know in Mishna? One is centralized, well, PI.
Preliminary information.
Yeah, PI. PI means preliminary ideas, right? Preliminary ideas, because you'll find that Rebbe wrote an intermediate text. This is not a text, it's intermediate. It assumes you have a vast knowledge before you even get to the Mishnah, which is interesting. This is why, one of the reasons why Mishnah is difficult to learn. Because you walk into a Mishnah, I'm not even going into the fact that the Mishnah is tremendously brief, that it doesn't even read a complete sentence or law. It just has 2 or 3, as we will see in the first Mishnah, it's got 2 or 3 words, and that's all, and you expect to understand what's going on. So the style of the Mishnah is very difficult, right? It's very abbreviated, just like the Gemara, right? It has no background information, really, So therefore, a Mishnah is very difficult. So therefore, so when you learn a Mishnah, one, ask yourself, well, what do I have to know before I get to this Mishnah as a background for the Mishnah? That's one. So that's called the PR, the preliminary ideas, because Rebbe wrote an intermediate. The second thing you want to know, right, is what this is after you, is the halachas. You're going to learn, because a Mishnah is nothing more than a what? Than a collection of halachas. So you got the preliminary ideas, and then you're going to go into the halachas, right? You're going to learn each halacha with those 6 ideas, if you can, right? Great. Then after the halachas, okay, but remember one thing, you're going to count the statements in the Mishnah. The memory remembers what you delineate, what you 1, 2, 3, 4. If it looks like a cholent, your memory will throw it out. You see? And what's going to have to do in order to compensate for the fact that your memory is fighting you, right? What you're going to have to do, right, is review it 100 times. But that's incredibly inefficient. Why work against your memory? It's people do all the time. They don't realize that the memory has rules, So the rule of the memory is delineate, which means you need to know the amount clearly, you see. So you want to know, one, the preliminary ideas. You're going to learn the halachas with these criteria.
Mishnaic statements?
What was that?
Mishnaic
You're going to, the preliminary ideas, you're going to learn the Mishnaic statements, correct? It may or may not be a halacha. A statement could be, all of a sudden somebody asks a question and he answers them, so that's not a halacha. They're obviously arguing about some point, but it's still a statement. I don't call them halachas, I call them statements, which includes halachas. So you have the preliminary ideas, 1. 2 is Mishnaic statements. How many are there? 3, what are they? And what I would suggest is what? Is to assign 2 or 3 words to each statement. And when you review those 2 or 3 words that will jar your memory, and you'll be able, you can chaz a Mishnah in 10 seconds flat if you know what to do. It's astounding what you can do. That was last week's Shiur. I have a whole Shiur on memory. I would suggest eventually it will be posted, right, someday.
If you don't forget.
If I don't forget. But I would suggest it was a very good Shiur. It tells you how to memorize the entire Mishnayos, all of it, and how to memorize Shas. It's, Anyway, that was last week's Shiur. Now, so you have the preliminary ideas, you have the Mishnaic statements, right? The number, then you have what they are, and if you can, assign 2 or 3 words that are peculiar to you. Means if it's my 3 words, I immediately remember the halacha, but you may not with those 3 words. We all have different reference points for whatever reason. That's what life is all about, and so on. So I would do that is number 3. Okay. Then the CI is a central idea. Okay. Mishnah isn't just Rebbe just didn't throw up the halacha and say, okay, ini, mini, mini, mo. Didn't do that. What he did is he connected halachas together. So every Mishnah basically has a central idea or theme that connects all the halachas in that Mishnah. So number 1, that will clarify what's really going on. The central idea already is synthesis, because anything that brings together many ideas means you're building now instead of breaking. So the CI, central idea, or the central theme, that's tremendous for clarity, And that's really, usually it's a category. And the second thing, for memory, it's great. Because the memory loves to know something that by association you could bring in everything else. That's how memory works. You know, we remember A, we remember idea 1, and all of a sudden idea 2, 3, and 4 pop right into the mind. That's association. The greatest association is a structure that's connected through their relationships, where everything is connected, how they relate to each other. That's why a structural learning structurally, is incredible for memory. Because there's the associations, you know, you see the connection, you see. So therefore, the central idea is the beginning of that structure, you see. So that's number 4. And number 5, if you can do it, is the CIA. Sounds funny? CIA is a central idea area, means the central idea itself fits into what area? Not only each individual halacha, but the central idea area. The central idea, what's its category, its overall category, and so on. Anyway, that's basically what to look for in the Mishnah.
Would that pertain to the parak itself?
Would what
No,
pertain?
I have 10 Mishnas in parak, this and this parak, and
Okay.
we'll have, each one has a central idea, and then the parak itself has a central idea that they're attached to.
Yes, oh yeah, that's exactly, that's how
So
it
that would be
builds.
the CIA, would that be the CIA?
Yeah, that would be, well, the central idea area of the central idea. Now, I stopped there, but really, what really you should do, right, is called the central idea, the structure. Because even if you know the area of that idea, where does that idea, the area or the category fit in the overall structure? See, that's when it becomes beautiful. Because ultimately what you're building, you know what it's like? It's like, you imagine you're walking down Yafo, right? You see this lot, right? And on that lot is what? You know, there's a whole pile of bricks, cement, you know, beams, you know what I'm saying? Plasterboard, you know what I'm saying? Then, you know, a kid will walk over and say, what is this? It's just a bunch of pieces and a lot. And then a half year ago, actually in Israel it's about a couple of years. A couple of years goes by and all of a sudden the kid goes, say, wow, there's a whole building here. You know, where'd that come from? The answer is, these were the ingredients for that building. You see, it's the same thing. The problem is the way Torah is and the hashkafa reasons for it. But the problem the way Torah is not Torah, I should say, Mishnayos. Not Torah is different because the Moshe wrote the Torah, so can't argue with him. But with the Mishnayos, right, the problem is it's a jigsaw puzzle. It's pieces. Sometimes they're connected, most of the times they're not. You don't really see the connections, you know, and so on. So most learning is a halachic jigsaw puzzle. So the task isn't to keep it as a puzzle, but to put it all together ultimately as a structure, you see. And then you see the entire thing in front of you. So that's really what you want to do. And the structure will give you unbelievable clarity. You can't believe the clarity of a structure, and the association between all the connecting dots is incredible for our memory. You see, if you had a structure of any Masechta, right? If you had a structure of any Masechta, you don't realize something. You can chaz that Masechta in a half hour, easy. Especially if you have the structure written down. You know, you really can chaz all Mishnayos in one day. All of it. 4,192 Mishnayos. Because the trick isn't to see each individual halacha Mishnah. The trick is to look at the entire picture, and then you just go through it. You see, this, and all of a sudden, there it is. You see. So you can chaz the entire 4,192 Mishnayos one day. It's a big, tremendous challenge. Obviously, it assumes you've mastered it and so on. You know? But it's the way to go. You know. And if you don't, it doesn't have to be a day. You do it a week. Even a month is incredible. That means you do Mishnayos 12 times a year. It's incredible. You know, because there's over, like I said, there's over 100,000 ideas in Mishnayos with all this put together. You'd be an Adam God just from that alone. And like I mentioned, today the Mishnayos enables you because today you have many Mishnayos written with all the preliminary ideas, Kahati, Saita Dishmaya, you know, and then the Art Scroll Chumash and so on. They're giving you the information, you know. You just have to realize you got to put it all together. You see, okay? great. Okay, Rosh Hashanah. Who's gonna say?
First Mishna or in general?
The first Mishna, yeah.
Before we do that, shouldn't we do the preliminary ideas?
Yes, well, that's what we're gonna realize very quickly.
Okay.
Take a look.
Which is very hard with this first Mishna.
This Mishna is,
Is it?
yeah.
It says, Haba Rosh Hashanah, there are 4 beginnings of a year.
Yeah.
Be'echad b'Nisan, Rosh Hashanah, the Malachim, the Revelim. The first of Nisan is beginning of the year for kings and for holidays.
Stop. Now, that is about as brief as you can get.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the first idea? Well, let's take the first idea in terms of thinking, right? What's the first idea?
First of all, what is a Rosh Hashanah?
Well, Rosh Hashanah means the first day of an annual time period. It's called a year.
So,
What's next?
so which seems it has 2 different attributes to it. It can be a point. Well, it is a point, but it can be a point for the sake of differentiating between one year to the next, meaning it's to count, or it could be the beginning of a whole tkufa.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
where you want to look at it.
I'm not clear exactly what you're saying, but that first statement would say what? That there are 4
There are 4 different
New Year days.
days.
Now, what's a New Year day? A New Year day is the first day, right, in a year. That's all it means.
Mm-hmm.
So what the Mishnah is now telling us is what?
There are
Really?
there are there are 4 points.
By the way, anybody can join in. You know,
Yes.
it don't-
Okay. The surprising thing is you'd think that there's only one of them, but it's 4 of them.
we're not even up to 4. We have to understand what in the world this Mishnah is talking about. You're into the number.
Right.
You know, we need to figure out what is a Rosh Hashanah, what's have to do with what's about to happen.
But that's the
Then we can take
preliminary.
that there are 4 of them.
So now we need the preliminary information to start out and say, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah,
Where do we go? We're in the middle of something.
that's right. Well,
Okay.
yeah,
Look,
yeah.
we know Rosh from Rosh Chodesh, right? And we have the months, so we know about counting the months, but we don't have any idea of a group of it being a year.
No, not really, no. The question is, what does that mean, that there are 4 New Year days?
So there seems that there are 4.
And then the Mishnah, there are 4 New Year days, 1.
Mhm.
And then the Mishnah proceeds to give us, right,
4.
halachic areas. Kings is one area, whatever that means, right?
Mhm.
Holidays, these are halachic areas, right? So we're going to connect 2 ideas here. We're going to connect a year time frame, right, to a halachic area.
Mhm.
That's really what the Mishnah is saying.
Mhm.
Yes?
Mhm.
But what is the Mishnah really telling us by saying 4?
That there are 4 points that start a cycle called a year.
Yeah, that there are 4 points.
Noise.
Keep going. What are those points called, really? There are 4 dates.
Mhm.
Okay.
They're not points, they are
Mm.
dates.
Okay.
There are 4 dates in a calendar year that do what?
That start
That serve as
start.
first days for an annual time period. In other words,
Yeah.
there are 4 days or dates in a calendar year
Mhm.
that have the purpose of serving, right, as the beginning of a year for various halachic areas.
Mhm.
You see? That's all it's really saying. It seems to be convoluted, you know, that's really what it's saying. So what's the chiddush here? So divide that conceptually. Divide that. There are 4 dates one, yes?
Mhm.
What about these 4 dates in a calendar year, right? They happen to be New Year days, which is
Mhm.
beginning or first days of an annual time period, or first days of a year, right? That's
Mhm.
the second concept.
Mhm.
The third concept is for various halachic areas.
Mhm.
So there are 3 ideas here. That they are, what was that?
What is it again?
There are 4 dates in a calendar year.
Okay.
One. To do what? Well, these dates serve as first days of a year time period,
Mhm.
right? For various halachic areas that need a time period called a year, whatever reason. You see, so there are 3 ideas here, right? There are 4 dates in a calendar year, right, that serve to be the first day of a year, of a time period called a year, for various halachic areas. So we have the concept of 4 dates, we have the concept of, right, a time period of a year, of which these 4 dates are the beginning, for different halachic areas that require an annual or yearly time period.
Mhm.
See?
Definition,
What?
definition. That's it.
Well, that's very clearly what the Mishnah is saying.
Mhm.
So what's the major chidush here? The halachic areas, A. The fact that certain halachic areas need a year time period,
Mhm.
B. Or that there are only 4 dates in the whole calendar year that serve as beginnings.
That's the,
That's the chiddush. You know, the chiddush isn't that there are halachic areas that need a year time period.
that you know, if you read the
You
Parsha.
know, if you know those halachic areas, then you know that in certain respects they need a year time period.
Mhm.
You know, right? So we would say, you know, there are many halachic areas, right, that need a year time period for whatever reason, right? So we would say, wow, there could be 15 dates
Mhm.
that are first days for all of these. The answer is no. Believe it or not, there's only 4 dates in the whole year, right? And those dates will serve as New Year days, first days, right? Of those halachic areas that need time periods. There you are. So the Chiddush is 4 dates. You see, it's interesting. You see, that's, you gotta divide it
Mhm.
slowly, conceptually. You see, now it makes perfect sense. Simple. You know? So the Chiddush in this first mission is all about what? What are the 4 dates that kick off a year?
Mhm.
And what are the halachic areas that correspond to these 4 dates?
Mhm.
So,
Is that clear?
Mhm.
How's that sound? Is it clear? Okay.
Rabbi,
That sounds sweet. Clear as mud? Is it clear as mud? Now, I want to tell you something. Many guys learn that first opening phrase and they go wild. Like, what in the world is this Mishnah saying? Again, because Rebbe was very brief, you know. What Rebbe could have said that there are 4 tarichim, that there are 4 dates, A, and these are the first days of a year time period, you see, for halachic areas. But he doesn't say that. All he says that there are 4 dates
Mhm.
that are beginning of New Year, a new year. That's all he says. And then he begins to give you the halachic areas and which date they correspond to. You see? It's confusing.
Yes.
When you break it down, it's understandable. Anybody have a problem so far with what I've
Yeah,
said?
he has
Please don't.
he's excluding Shvi'a 7-year period or 49-year period.
All he's saying is that for those halachic areas that need, for whatever
For
reason,
1 year,
a-
or annual.
an annual time period, which is called a year, right?
Mhm.
Right? And there are many, apparently, there are many halachic areas that need an annual time period or a year time period, for whatever reason. When do they start? And the answer is there's only 4 dates in the whole calendar year that will serve. It could serve a New Year day for 12 of them, but 12 years or 12 halachic areas. That's the chiddush, that there's only 4 of them.
So,
Well,
it came up in learning, like when we were learning, Larry and I, why do you need 4, you know?
Why do we need?
4.
Why do we
don't you
need?
just have 1? Yeah. In other words,
Yeah.
Well,
so here, it's part of the Kiddush.
That's
I
a,
think, of the
well,
person.
the Mishnah is not gonna answer that, why these 4, Obviously, they are, if you look at the halachic areas, they're all biblical. So clearly, where's the limud? How do we know that for this halachic area, its date of initiating a year time period, how do we know that? So there's gonna be psukim. Yeah. You're right, that's a very valid question. Yeah. What you're really asking is what? What is the derivation that these 4 dates are the magic days
Yes,
that
exactly.
start,
And why
that
excluding
start?
others?
Well, yeah, so what you're asking, your question then is in the area called derivation. From whence do we derive these 4 dates for these halachic areas? Very valid question, yeah. But we're not even into that, we're just trying to figure out what he's talking about. Does everybody get this so far?
Perfect, brilliant.
What?
And is it also, and I'm just wondering, is it because we're using the same expression of Rosh Hashanah that
That
this is being
confuses.
placed in this, the beginning of this Masechta? Because this is really going to be, this could have been stated in the
Anyway.
beginning of Moed.
Yeah.
Or-
Well, has anybody here learned a lot of this Mishnayos Masechta? Has anybody learned a lot of that? Can I have a raise of hands here? How many people have learned more than one Mishnah? Oh wow, I'm overwhelmed with the vast scholarship in this room.
Wait, I'm landing before you can roll call.
Oh, wait a minute, okay, so here it goes.
Efficiently, that may be others.
Okay, you guys, yeah,
We put
okay.
ourselves on the line.
Yeah, and here it comes.
You get 2. It's his fault.
What?
No, I thought you meant more than a pair. I learned more than one mission.
Okay, okay, so here's the question. Just like
We
this
read
is.
it, I don't say we learned it.
It
I read
doesn't-
I read it.
Okay, now I said that there was a central idea of a Mishnah, yes?
Mhm.
But guess what? There's also a central idea of the entire Masechta.
Mhm.
Do you know that? Because a Masechta deals with really, when you look at the overall topic, really it deals with one topic. You see?
Mhm.
But in order to figure that out, really you gotta go through most of the Mishnayos.
Mhm.
You know, and after a while you get a real hint and so on. But you've got to be able to deduce. Now, I once told you, the reason why it's so hard for guys to figure out structure, why? Because you guys have never been trained to think inductively,
Mhm.
at most deductively. What does that mean? What does it mean to deduce? It means to look at a general principle and to deduce a specific
Mhm.
from a cloud to a prat.
Mhm.
That's easy. You know, you got a general principle, right? And then, for instance, you know, the area of a room is the length times the width. That's a principle. It's really mathematical, but it's a principle. That if you multiply the length of a room by the width of a room, yes, you will get the area,
Mhm.
right? In Israel, I don't know if it's true because the room is so small. I don't know if that's going to help. You know, you wind up having,
Trapezoids.
you wind up having the area of like 1 or 2 meters. Anyway,
That's only to master bedroom.
yeah. Anyway, so therefore, that's the cloud. The specific is, I walk into a room and say, okay, how do I derive its area? And the answer is, I measure out the length, measure out the width. That's a specific application of the general formula. You see? Simple. But what happens if you only have pratim, details, and you want to figure out the general principle? That's called inductive reasoning. That's much harder. Much harder. And the problem is, most guys have never been taught how to think that way. That's why nobody structures, because they cannot think backwards. You see, I give this example many times. A detective, he comes into a crime scene. Somebody's on the floor and he's murdered. Right? He's a dead body, right? And this guy walks in. What's his job? His job is to figure out who did it. Yes? But how's he going to do that? He doesn't know who did this. He wasn't around at the time this guy was killed, right? So what does he look for? Clues. But he's got to but the clues are just fragments. You see? Maybe it was where the door wasn't broken into, so he figures that obviously this guy answered the door. Maybe he knew who it was. And that's why he let him in. Oh, so the murderer has to be somebody he knew. You see, all kinds of deductions from individual clues. You see what I'm saying? That's called induction. He has to figure out, right, from many clues, a general concept. He has to reconstruct the crime scene. That's what he has to do. But that's induction. Sherlock Holmes was incredible at that. You know, Sherlock Holmes. Remember Sherlock
Induction.
Holmes?
Sure.
Induction.
Everybody thinks it's the other way, everybody
It's
thinks
induction,
it's
it's all
deep.
Yeah.
Because
I
Conan
do,
Doyle
they always use the term
Right,
deductive,
exactly.
Induce, yeah,
but
it's-
it's
Conan Doyle
actually,
used
it's
to
really
do-
induced.
It's really induced, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. So Arthur Conan Doyle, I know most people don't realize, well, how do you figure out this character? Where do you get Sherlock Holmes? Sherlock Holmes, the greatest and most famous detective of all time. And he, of course, he's a fiction. He never lived. But where did Conan Doyle figure this out? I remember, you know,
Professor.
because Conan Doyle was a medical doctor, right? And so was Watson. That's where he got Watson from, right? He went to medical school in Scotland, right? And one of the things he had to take was pathology. Pathology is the cause of disease. More than that, it's also, you know, you look at the body and you see what the disease did. It's really the cause of death or illness, whatever, you know, and so on. So he had this professor, and this guy was incredible. This guy could look at a body and tell you who the guy was, how he lived, and how he died. What a power of induction, I should say. So that's how he wrote, he made Holmes, modeled it after this professor. It's interesting, huh? There was actually a guy who used to do this. You know, the guy was a pathology guy and so on. Anyway, that's just an aside.
But the way deduction does come into it, because once you have this general construct,
Then you can
you
deduce
match the
further.
facts to it, you deduce.
Exactly,
From that.
very good, exactly. Once you've induced and created a structure, guess what? That structure now lends itself to make incredible amount of deductions. You go backwards, you see? But that's the problem. That's why guys find it very hard to synthesize. So therefore, what is the single idea that unites the entire sector? What's the central idea of the entire Masechet Rosh Hashanah?
Time
The
established.
begin,
Who?
Establishing time.
No.
Creating the beginning.
No. There's one concept that is the central concept, idea, or theme of the entire Masechet. What are the areas of the Masechet? Since you guys have learned that, right? What are the areas?
Time periods and time periods.
First Mishnah is what? Time periods, right? Or rather, the beginning of time periods that are required for halachic areas. Okay, what's the second Mishnah? Judgment.
judgment.
That there are 4 judgment times in the year. What's the next bunch of halachas? Kiddush HaChodesh. Kiddush HaChodesh, right? What is Kiddush HaChodesh? Who can tell me?
Beginning of establishing the beginning of a monthly cycle.
To do what?
Establish the beginning of a monthly cycle.
Okay, good. To establish the what?
Beginning
Of a
monthly cycle.
monthly cycle. Okay, I'll go along with that. I would define it more precisely, you know. Kiddush HaChodesh is the process in which the Beis Din can designate which month is assigned to which cycle of days. Because there's no such thing as a month, really. It's a cycle of days. It's one day, right? The earth rotates, yes? So if it's one day, next day, next day. The question is, we have a new thing, we have a new measure called a month. Where does it fit? All we really see is a cycle of days. You know, we don't see Adar. There's such thing as Adar, you see? But if I want to take Adar and I wanted to assign it to a cycle of days, which is what we experience, which days is Adar? Got it? That's really what it is. So you're right that it's a month, but the problem is there's no such thing as a month called Shvat, really. All we experience is a cycle of days, rotation of the earth. Night, day, night, day, night, day, right? And we assume night and day make one day, one entire rotation is a cycle, yes? But all we experience is just an ongoing repetition of days. Now, We come, what
Their
was that?
Very
relationship-
nice and.
Who?
Relationship to the moon.
The moon changes.
Yes, wait. But really, right, what do we experience? We just experience night and day. That's all. We don't experience the moon. What we know is a night and day business.
We see
And
the
there's a
moon.
repetition of night and day,
We
right?
see the moon.
Who?
We see the moon. We see it's changing.
No, you're not getting it.
Isn't it in relationship to the moon? When we see the moon, Rio.
No.
I think to strengthen your point even further is the two adars, because without that, you could just say it follows in a system. But that strengthens it much further, because
Yeah.
it makes it like without that, without this establishment,
A
you don't
month,
know anything.
a month is an arbitrary unit of time. It really is. You think of a month, wow, you know, no. A month is an arbitrary unit of time that we've chosen to do what? What is a month? It's a unit of time, right? That's what it is.
Right.
Right.
It's based
Now, we've
on
chosen to
physical
measure
thing.
months, or what will determine months, by what's called an astronomical phenomenon called a lunation, which is a complete revolution of the moon around the earth. You see? Okay, but the question is, okay, we have a month, right? But the question is, what do we do with this 30-day period? We need to place it somewhere. We need to say, this 30-year period called Tammuz, right? Which days are assigned this thing called the month Tammuz? You see? The month Tammuz is arbitrary, but the cycle of days is not.
Because it has a
So
lot.
imagine there are 365 days, right? Of those 365 days, which ones will I call Tammuz? You see? Now, how do I know? Because, so Kiddush HaChodesh is a process where I figure out which is day one of Tammuz, and maybe the rest will fall into place.
And the
But what you're really trying to do is assign a month to a cycle of days. And the way you do that is to figure out which day will be the first date of Tammuz. That's what Kiddush HaChodesh is. Got that?
But
So
the
really
Torah,
saying that-
the Torah needs you to do that.
Yes.
Because it tells you this happens in the 5th month, this happens
Does
in
the
the
Torah
7th
need
month.
you? Oh, no.
The Chodesh HaAvel.
No.
It tells you that the 5th month.
If you want to think about this sequentially, okay? What's the first idea to think about before you get to the concept called month? Okay.
Days.
I need induction here. I need you to rise above the moon, to rise above,
Astronomical,
right? I need you to look above and look down at this whole Kiddush HaChodesh business, right? And I need you to tell me what's the first idea you need to begin to think about. The first idea, second idea, third idea. You see, that's how you're going to build a whole structure and a beautiful understanding of Chodesh. So what's the first idea?
Different days have different natures.
No. That's true, but that's not the first idea.
That a year is divided up into distinct, separate time periods, known as months.
Okay, yes, that's one of them, but that's not the first idea.
Hashem gave us different guideposts by which.
No, leave God out of this.
No, but to help us.
Sounds like a
Oh, no.
strange statement. Especially coming from this place. Oh. God is involved in everything, so, No, what's the first idea? What?
No, I was thinking specifically, like Pesach should be in the spring.
Fine, okay, so Pesach in the spring tells me what?
That there are certain times of the year, forget a year, okay, forget the year.
That the location of a holiday called Pesach has to be in a
Has some
season
parameter.
called spring. That's all it tells me. But there's something way above that. Come on. Here's the first idea. Time. One. The second concept is that time passes. The passage of time. Yes? Is two. Number three, if I want to locate a point in time, what do I do? I have a thing called time. What is time?
Have to measure, be able to measure.
Oh, you see? What is time? Time is, it's very hard to define time, but time is the continuity or the duration of existence, whatever that means. That's all it is. That means existence durates or continues. That continuity of existence is called time. What is time itself? We don't know. But we do know that things continue to exist. So therefore, it seems, we say that the duration that something can continue to exist is called time. It goes through time. Okay, good. So we talk about time, what? Time passes, the passage of time, too, right? But what we want to do, the passage of time, right? We want to be able to locate points in time. Why? For instance, if I say, I'm going to meet you in some future, how are we going to locate that time point? Or if I tell you, 3 years ago, I had a baby. What? But that's 3 years. If I say, a long time ago I had a baby, when? What do you mean? What's the time point, you see? So we realize that there's a concept called time. The second thing we realize is that time passes. The third thing we realize is that time passes, that it's called a continuum. It's a continuum, you see? Third idea. The fourth idea is, hey, I want to locate a point,
Discrete.
whether it be something that will happen, something that was happening, or now. What's now?
How do you
What
measure-
is now?
How do you measure time?
Well, wait. Now, in order to, so therefore remember, time, it's passage, it's a continuum. And the necessity is to locate time points on this continuum. 4. Everybody got that so far? 5. The only way to locate a time point is what? Is I have to be able to measure time. 5. How do I measure time? You see? Wait. So therefore, in order to measure anything, number 6, what do I need? You're right, but why does a ruler do it for me? And a ruler doesn't measure time, it measures space.
No, but we're talking
You
about,
need to judge intervals.
What?
You need to judge intervals.
We need to have units of time. And then I can count the units. You see? Now, where do I get my units from? And the answer is, I need to pick out units of time. Right? Where do I get units from? Well, ideally speaking, it should be a unit that everybody could see. That's universal. So the first thing that appears to us is astronomical events. Wow. Because they seem to be repetitive. They're called cyclic. They go again and again and again. So why not use an astronomical event called as a unit? Beautiful. How many astronomical units can we use? How many astronomical events occur and we could use them as units? How many?
2.
2. What are they?
Sunrise,
The
sun.
sun and the moon.
Versus the Earth, where you are in the Earth.
Well, even before that.
I ask you, how many astronomical events can we use?
So many.
No,
Sun.
Some rising and setting.
no.
that's not,
There are 3 of them. One is the Earth rotates. That is an astronomical event. It rotates around its axis. Hey, not bad. And that's cyclic. It's repetitive. The next thing we could use is the revolution of the moon around the Earth. Not bad. The third thing is, wow, we revolve around the sun. There you are. Rotation, revolution, lunar revolution, and Earth revolution. There you are. Those are the 3 astronomical phenomena that we can use as units. Wow, great. You see how it builds? Now, once we could use them as units, right? So then I could say, I will meet you in 3 moons from now. Right? But really, when I say I will meet you in 3 moons, what am I really saying?
At what point in the month?
I will meet you in 3 months. By the way, the word month comes from the word moons. That's where it comes from. The word month comes from the word moons.
The
You
source
see?
is crazy.
Who?
Loony.
it's the other way around. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
Lunar comes from lunar.
Right. Well, I'm not sure.
Anyway, so therefore, I now have 3 different astronomical phenomena that is cyclic, and it's obvious to everybody, and these could provide beautiful measures or units of time. Beautiful. You see how it works? Now, once I have a measure or unit of time, I can now talk about what? I could talk about future. I will meet you in 3 months from now. I could talk about past. We had an interesting meeting together 3 months previous, right? Right?
Wow.
Now, but the question is now. What's now? There's no now. Now is the immediate moment. How do I measure now? You see? So hold that off.
Yeah.
Right? So I now have 3 ways to talk about the future. I have 3 ways to talk about the past. Isn't that interesting? But there's several things that elude me. One is, how do I talk about now? And the second thing is, how do I divide these units into subunits? You see? Right? How do I divide a month into subunits? Because if I want to meet you in 2.5 months, so you know what I'm saying? It's a little unwieldy here. I'll meet you in 2.5 months. Or I'll say, I'll meet you in 3 3 3/3 revolutions of the sun. What? That's how long it's going to take to get together?
That's right.
You see, that becomes problematic. So therefore, mankind had to come up with the idea of what? Of taking a unit and fraction of that unit, to break it down. Or mankind had to come up with a unit called a multiple of a unit. You see? So, the Rebbe provided us with an incredible fraction. And that is called a day. A day is a fraction of a month. A day is also a fraction of a year. The problem is, how do you fractionize the days itself into hours?
Rotation of the earth.
All right, and so on. So so therefore, all these things are nothing more than we need to create units because we want to measure time. And the reason why we want to measure time is because we need to be able to establish time points for the future and for the past. You see how it goes?
But you mentioned this before, the rotation of the Earth around this axis is 1 day.
It's 1 day.
Around the moon is 30 days, is a month, and then
No,
around the sun,
no.
the sun around the Earth or whatever is a year. So
We calculated, because they took a look at the moon when the moon is first appears. That's called Chidush HaMavana. And they said, okay, let's take a look at how many days will it take until, because the day is a smaller unit than a month. And they figured out it takes 29 days, 12 hours,
And 793 Chalavim.
whatever. Let's say 12, it takes 29 and a half days. That's all. So therefore, they figured from now on, we want to use the lunation, which is a complete revolution of the moon around the Earth. They figured it's approximately 29 and a half days. Okay? So therefore, what is Kiddush HaChodesh? What is the best way to do it? What?
it's a renewal of a cycle.
What is Kiddush
It's the
HaChodesh?
point that we fix for the beginning of a month.
Again, what is Kiddush HaChodesh?
That's based in saying that this month starts at this time.
Say it, Kiddush HaChodesh is a process. Yes? Whereby the Sanhedrin is able to designate the month called Tammuz on which cycle of days. In order to do that, we just have to figure out which is the first day, and then we know the rest. Tammuz is an arbitrary concept, because think about this, the year could have been divided in 30 months. Forget about the moon. You see? The concept of time, of month, is arbitrary, except we use the moon, right, as a reference point.
Would it be that derivation though?
Who?
The derivation, we have a pasuk in the Torah, Chodesh Hazeh.
Yeah, no, well, it's not just Torah. What do you mean? The mankind does this. All mankind measures this way.
How was the solar year
That's how it started.
established?
The ancient people, the Greek, all these guys, Chaldeans, how do they measure time? Everybody needs to measure time.
Some of them measured by the moon, some of them measured just by the solar.
Exactly. People measure by different astronomical phenomena. That's all. You see? In other words, we say a year is 12 lunations. They say a year is
365.
one revolution around the sun. We don't say that. That's why our year is 354 days, and their year is 365 days. That, our year is not their year. That's why we have to, what's called intercalate, and so on. But what I'm trying to give you an appreciation is, months in many ways are arbitrary, you see. What we do is we say, well, a month, we will assign it, right, based on the cycle of the moon. But the question is, which day is which?
Isn't that what
So
it
you're
refers?
saying
Now,
that,
why is that a problem by us? Now, normally, what should have been the first date of the month? Chidush Halavana. Hey, there it is, I see the moon. And that's the first day. But the Torah said you don't have to do that. You can decide which is the first day. You got a leeway of 2 days. You see? And after that, no more. You know, or else it'll get out of hand, you know? You know, and so on, right? So Besdin has a leeway of when the month starts. It can either start on the 30th day
Or the 31st.
or the 31st day. Wow. You see what I'm saying? That's
but,
interesting.
but doesn't it follow that regardless of which day we designate it to be, that is when the Chiddush HaMeravana will take place?
It may or may not. There are times when Besdin looks at and they see the witness come and they say Chiddush Levana, and they say, we don't want this to be the first day. We want tomorrow to be the first day, which will be automatic
Or the
anyway.
opposite.
Yeah, they are not ruled strictly by the moon, although hopefully they will do it, you see. But remember that's very important, that the thing we really deal with is a cycle of days. The concept of a month, right, we need to designate when is that month on the cycle of days. If the moon itself, the appearance of the moon, right, if Besdin didn't have that power, then it automatically, that astronomical phenomenon would say that the first day is when that moon appears. That's it. But once the Torah gave permission for the Besdin to decide when is the month start, means which day is the first day or date one, then it's no longer dependent on the moon. It depends on what Besdin wants to do, period. Therefore, Tammuz is an arbitrary distinction. You see? That's what I meant.
Yes.
So actually, Beit Din could receive appropriate witnesses and still put it off a day.
Exactly, that's exactly what they did.
They work backwards.
Which is, they were not bound by the witnesses.
Not only
I mean,
that,
obviously,
If there are no
Why?
witnesses at all, they can still set
I have
it.
a question.
But why?
why?
Nobody
That
says
seems a
no.
little counterintuitive.
Yes, it does, but there's a Mishna that, that's later on, but if witnesses came after the Mincha, you know, witness came after, then it was a whole problem created because during the day, they assumed it was the previous month, and now witness came, and they said, no, it's today is the first day, so meanwhile the wrong korban was offered. So they didn't say, we don't want to do that, so let's just move it the next day. You know, because this is obviously the mitzvahs, yeah, and so on, you know. But that's a very important concept, okay? But you see how it all begins. Time, passage, continuum, necessity to locate time points, measure, units, astronomical phenomena are the units. You see? And then what we need is either multiples or fractions of those units. This is all about time.
It's another interesting thing. You said take Hashem out of it, but, and that's what you're
Now-
saying you do.
now-
No, but what you're saying
Bring it
is,
back.
is we determine it.
What?
We have the tools to determine when the month starts. So we are taking Hashem out of it in a sense.
No, he's putting us.
No, we're in it because he
Yeah,
wants
but-
to be in it.
I know, but we can make determinations.
Yeah, now
this-
why is it so, for us, why is it important?
Hashkafically, or?
Hashkafi, and I can get into a little
Because
Hashkafi.
if we're governed by the moon, then we're worshiping the moon perhaps. And we're not governed by the moon. We're governed by our decision as to what the moon is. And what the Chodesh
No.
is.
There's a
No,
certain,
well,
this is really showing our shlita over.
you will notice, if you said you guys learned more Mishnayos. Did you notice a very peculiar halacha? That the witnesses can desecrate the Sabbath to make sure they get to Jerusalem in time to testify. What does that tell you? What's the principle of that? Tell me. Can you imagine witnesses in Machal Shabbos in order to assist them in getting to Yerushalayim, to the Beis Din in time to designate that day as day one, which kicks off the month.
So the important,
What is the principle? Why would the Torah do that?
the importance of it is so important, it's almost up there with the Kohen.
Well, yeah, but
So,
Why?
I would say so to speak.
yes, I will, yes, what you're saying is correct. But what I would just flower it up a little, okay? Clearly, the principle of witnesses being able to desecrate the Shabbos reveals what? An incredible urgency that your first day should be aligned with the astronomical first day. There you are. In other words, there's a thing called the rabbinical Rosh Chodesh, and there's a thing called the lunar Rosh Chodesh. The lunar Rosh Chodesh appears when the moon comes out, right? But the rabbinical appears when they declare. Clearly the Torah said, listen, I realize I gave you leeway, 2 days, but let's not go, I need you guys, right? It's urgent that you align yourself with the rabbinical first day, with the astronomical first day. That's an urgency, and the proof of that is witnesses can be Machal Shabbos to do it. So what you're saying is correct. It signals an incredible sense of importance and urgency that the first day of the rabbis, rabbinical month, should align with the astronomical month. That's why they Machal Shabbos.
Isn't it, it's an issue of responsibility, because Baruch Hu is giving, gives.
No. It's not responsibility. Now, anybody know why?
Because there is a certain
Why, what's it?
hashpah on every single month that you want to be aligned so that you've captured whatever.
What
needs-
determines the hashpah?
The way Hashem set up the world.
No. No.
Mazel of that.
What?
The way that the earth and sun and everything's aligned within
That's called the astronomical events.
the astronomical events.
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
It's amazing. What is astrology? What is astrology?
The study of the mazolos.
When planets and,
More than that. Study the mazolos is astronomy, not astrology.
when the planets are in a certain position.
No, don't give me specifics. What is astrology? What is it really?
The interpretation of astronomical events into our daily lives.
It's the interpretation or the study of, either way, right, of astronomical events, yes, and how they influence worldly affairs. That's what astrology is. Now, astronomers will look at you and say, you're out of your mind. You didn't tell me because there's a nova that just blew, or the sun is in the house of, whatever. You didn't tell me it has something to do with my character? Of course not. That's astronomy. Astronomy doesn't look at how these things influence our events. Astrology does. Therefore, what's the central thesis, idea of astrology? Is what? Is that astronomical events actually have an influence over us. You see? That
What is that to some extent?
No, of course not. No. Astrology is Minatura. You
Right.
find that. It's Minatura. What's the proof?
Oh,
Because Avram Avinu said,
Rashi.
I can't have kids because the astrological signs that they said no kids.
No,
No, was he not because?
No, I didn't mean it that way, I meant it.
No, I know you didn't
And
mean it that
now, people say you're in the Taurus, so you have X,
Oh,
Y, and Z.
But the reason for that is not because it's not legitimate, it's because you have no idea how to really calculate this. Look, the Egyptian astrologers, they knew exactly when Moshe Rabbeinu was born,
Right.
because they saw something happen, right? And they said, that's why he drowned all the kids.
Right, but then how about the Gemara?
And he
that
was
says-
right, and they were right. They knew the real astrology. Means
Right.
they knew how the astronomical events do influence. And they could read it accurately. These guys were incredible.
So there's like science and pseudoscience.
Well, for us now it's a pseudoscience. But according to
That's what
Torah, it's a real science.
Right, but then doesn't it say,
So it's very interesting though that-
Ein Mazalos B'Yisrael?
Yes.
How
Yeah,
does
yeah.
that stem with this conversation?
Because
Yeah, right.
Jews have the power of tikkun. The power of tikkun means we can influence the upper worlds. What is astrology? I really want to get back into the Rosh Hashanah.
It is a very interesting thing though, so we're really saying that Hashem gave us the shlita to say
Which-
when this hashpah
Correct.
shall.
That's absolutely, yes, exactly. We can determine, right, what hashpah happens on this day, because the hashpah of Rosh Chodesh is different than the hashpah of day number 2. And if we can say, well, we want this day to be 1, that means we are moving the hashpah of those mazolas, right, from this day to this day, because that's Rosh Chodesh.
And everything else
You
falls.
could do, that's like moving the universe.
Amazing
Yes.
power.
That, yeah.
Mind-boggling.
Well, that's what I.
Yeah, that's what,
What
that's
we are-
the incredible, you know, because every day has a certain hashpah, okay? Without getting into what, by the way, the Ramchal has a whole parak on this in Derech Hashem, astrology. And he actually says what astrology really is, you
Were
know?
we ever able to do this for our benefit to stop the going from having a certain influence on us? Or is it only because, as far as designating the month? Because as far as designating the month,
Yeah.
we have the koyach if we saw that there were certain problems that may come about,
So
to
what, what you
say
did,
this month is gonna start on.
so what you do, all you did is move it to another day. What you did is bought some time, you didn't change the
Yeah.
hashpah. So what?
But
But
to
the
me,
key
it's
idea,
outlined in Bereshit, that specifically at the beginning, it says, and the moons and the suns. So
Yeah.
Right,
You
I
can
just-
determine the regalim. It's like,
that's
it's
mamish
not-
what
see,
Rashi
that's the
said.
incredible power of Besdin.
Fantastic.
It's the power of Besdin. So, okay, fine, okay. So they can actually designate which day is the first day of the month in a cycle of days, because they decide. What really decides is the lunar, is the Chiddush Levana. It's called the appearance of the new moon. But they can actually move the day to the second day, and they say that's the first day of the month. But by doing that, they have actually moved a hashpah of Rosh Chodesh to another day. But that's universal. You're talking about hashkofa min hashemayim, because we're not talking here about astronomical events, because they happen. We are talking about, I might as well tell you this, the astrological event reflects the hashpahs of the spheres. You see, and the astrology is nothing more than an indicator of what's happening in the spheres. That's what it's all about, you see. And the spheres, or the changes of these incredible spiritual forces, right? They happen every day, and the sign, the indicators of this is the astrological phenomena, the astronomical phenomenon. So they are indicators of the spiritual hashpahs. You see, that's what astrology really is. It's a study of the spiritual forces, moving dynamics, right? And the indicators to that, it's like a test, like a blood test. You know, there are indicators that tell you what's in the blood. There are indicators that tell you what the spiritual movements are. You see? And the spiritual movements cause everything. So what the Bansham did is he tied astronomical events to spiritual events. Right? But right, that's what he did. But the incredible thing is, Besdin can say, I don't care if the spiritual event, which happens on Rosh Chodesh, happened yesterday, I'm moving it to today. You see, so they can move the whole business in for one day. Wow. That means they're moving the entire ruchnius of the Bria for another day. Not bad. Talk about the power of the Chachamim, you know? That's the power of the Chachamim. They can move the Shefa, the Hashpah, the influence of Ruchni to the next day, because that happens in Rosh Chodesh.
Yeah, but look what it depends on. It depends on how good someone's horse is, you know, to
Yeah.
get there in time.
Yeah.
And all these seemingly random.
Yeah, that means don't play around with your horse. You gotta get there. Well, that's why what the Bansham says, listen, even though I gave you the power, but don't play around with this.
That's the
You know,
responsibility.
because really, the Rachana really is I want the hashpah of your Rosh Chodesh to be aligned with the hashpah of the real Rosh Chodesh.
That's why
You see, I don't want to play around with this kind of stuff. You see, and the proof of that is Chil Shabbos.
Right.
That's the principle of Shabbos desecration is the principle of alignment, urgency. That's it, 2 words. Alignment, urgency is the principle of Chilul Shabbos. Isn't that interesting?
So inductively, one can induce, I guess,
Yeah.
if that, from this example, that Hashem baked in the power to actually change reality.
The reality of the timing is changed.
No, but the reality of the spiritual emanations is changing for a day.
Well, it's timing. You moved them to the next day. You didn't stop them.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Bezdin controls reality in that way, you're right? Yeah, isn't that astounding? You know what it reminds me of? There was once somebody, here's another beautiful example. A woman once came to the Rogatchover. You ever the Rogatchover going? Phenomenal person. I mean, just beyond belief, this guy, this man, this Rogatchover. But a woman once came to him and she was sick on a certain organ, whatever the organ was, and the doctor said it's terminal. It's terminal. So she came to the Rogatchover and said, let me tell you something, you know, it's terminal in this city because I paskined that a defect in this organ is a treifa, means we'll kill the animal within 12 months. Therefore, you have the defect in that organ, it's going to kill you in 12 months. But if you go to the other city, that Rav Paskin, that it's kosher. Go to that city and you'll live. She went to the city and she lived. That's power.
Does that mean she couldn't return back to that city?
No, no way.
Never
No,
return back to this city.
who cares?
I understood.
Well, that's why I finished
Wow.
It's about power. So the power of a disease was dependent on the Rogatchover's
When was
psak. Psak, is it kosher or treif? Because
Wow.
the treifa signs are they won't live for 12 months.
Right.
You know? So that's why she was going to die in 12 months because she was living in the wrong city. So you go to that city and you'll make it, and that's what happened.
When was this?
Rogatchover lived about he died in what, 1930, something like that.
So when Hashem says not to go back to Mitzrayim, he means it.
You know, might go back to Egypt.
He says for us not to go back to Egypt, he means it. You know.
Well, yeah. Usually.
Do we believe the records had that?
Anyway, I just wanted to show you
Yeah.
the power of the Chachomim. They actually determine physical events. Not only, so here's the Kiddush HaChodesh determines spiritual event, and Rogatchover, you know, the Psak of the Halacha and so on, you know, determines, there are other cases where the physical event is actually determined by the Psak Halacha. It's amazing when you think about that.
Was
you
the
know?
Rebnitzer in his category?
The who?
The Rebnitzer,
Who's the Ribnitzer? Oh, the Ribnitzer?
yeah.
Was he in whose category?
Was he able to do the same kind of,
Well, the Rogatchover was a posik. The Ribnitz was a Oived Hashem, was a tzaddik, and the Rogatchover was also a tzaddik. But you're asking me something that it's like asking me to judge between, you know. They were
but there are
both in-
stories about him as well.
Yeah, okay, that's different. That's Xera. Now we're talking about Psak Halacha and the Shulchan Aruch. You know, it's a, you know, it's like wow, you know, we're not talking about a tzaddik goes v'kodesh mekayim means a tzaddik can actually defy the physical universe because the Rebbe will mishan it. That's all, you know. But we're not talking here. We're talking about Psak Halacha.
Yeah.
You know, the halacha in my city is you're dead.
I said, go to
And-
Mekilim.
And in his city you're living. I mean, it's like wow, you know.
Wow.
Anyway, I just want to give an example of, you know, the koich of Chachomim and so on, you know, so, you know, don't mess around with Chachomim. Anyway, okay, so the first thing we had in the first Mishnah was 4 dates that are New Year dates for various halachic areas. The second Mishnah was about 4 judgment periods. The next bunch of Mishnah is all about,
Same page, shouldn't the full judgment also be called Rosh Hashanah?
what was that?
Shouldn't the Azmanim,
Yeah, probably, yeah.
That should also be a Rosh Hashanah, why not? It's also a yearly cycle of what's going to be.
No, but it doesn't kick off a yearly cycle.
It doesn't, because then you don't, that's the beginning of the year, what's going to be for the year.
Well, an annual time period is an annual time period. If
And the
there's-
beginnings of Rosh Hashanah.
Maybe you could look at it that way. You could say, for instance, on Pesach, the world is judged on food,
So
produce.
the voice of Rosh Hashanah.
So that would hold sway pashtus of the entire next Pesach.
Right.
That's what they, yeah, it's
Okay.
based on that
The first
reasoning.
Mishnah.
You'd be right, yeah, you'd say that, yeah.
So Why does the Mishna do that?
Why doesn't the Mishnah do that? It's a good question, you know. It's not talking about the halachic area called judgment. That's really what the second Mishnah is. It's judgment, time periods, you know. So it's not talking about those halachic areas, but it's an interesting question, you know. It's an interesting question. Anyway, so you have Kiddush HaChodesh. What's the next bunch of halachas is Kia, Rosh Hashanah.
Sure.
Yes? Okay, now you need to unite all these four halachic areas. You do it and give you one idea that unites the entire Masechta. What is the common denominator between all these things that I've just said? And that will give you the answer.
The early cycles,
Who?
the beginnings of the early cycles, halachic cycles.
It's not well. Kiddush HaChodesh is really a monthly cycle. It's not a yearly cycle.
The tekiyos are how we can cause hashpa onto the mazolos that will be in these
Yeah,
particular
but
months.
you went to hashkafa. No, forget hashkafa. Give me just how are all these four things related? I'll tell you. It's very interesting, you know. There's a Hebrew date called Aleph Tishrei. Right? Did you notice Aleph Tishrei has 5 dimensions? Just that date. It happens to be a Rosh Hashanah for halachic areas. That's the first Mishnah. It happens to be a day of judgment. Yes, right? It happens to be the first day of a month, isn't it? It also happens to be a holiday, right? Aleph Tishrei is all of those things. So therefore, what the Masechta does, it discusses all the different dimensions or areas of Aleph Tishrei. Interesting. It's all about Aleph Tishrei. Aleph Tishrei happens to be a first day of a year for various halachic areas. That's 1. It happens to be the first day of a calendar year. That's 2. It happens to be a judgment day. 3. It happens to be the first day of a month. 4. And it happens to be a holiday called Rosh Hashanah. 5. All on Aleph Tishrei. Therefore, Aleph Tishrei is the fundamental idea of Masechet Rosh Hashanah. You understand? Because Aleph Tishrei, it fits on all of these ideas.
Now, how would you come up with that?
Well, you have to learn to have learned the entire Masechta usually, and then ask yourself, what's the common denominator? So it happens to be this date is the common denominator of the entire Masechta. Of course, then you have peripherals, you know. Once you get into Kiddush HaChodesh, then we have a whole process and so on, you know.
But I guess, is that brought down in commentaries?
So what? Aleph Tishrei?
What you just said?
No,
No.
never seen it. No. It's just a matter of thinking. First, you have to be aware that there's a central idea to the entire Masechta.
Yeah.
Without that, what are you doing, right? But if you are aware of that, then you ask yourself, what is the central idea of the entire Masechta? You see? And if you think you can do it to Masechta, you really can do it to the entire Seder. To the entire, all the Masechtas in that Seder, you see. Which I think I once did it for you, right? What's the central idea of the entire Seder's rhyme? What is it?
The Makir Hano.
No, close.
Close. I think we once did this. Went through
Yeah,
the whole
yeah, yeah.
Shas, remember that?
It's,
I told you
what you need to do to get permission to use the Bria that Kodesh Baruch Hu gives, to acknowledge.
Okay, close enough. It's
Well,
all
like
about
this.
what are the devices that can be used to permit object usage. And there are 2 devices that the Seder's going to talk about. The first device is called a bracha, and the second device is called a matana, truma, maestris. But in the end, what they do is they permit object usage, the remainder. And a bracha permits the object usage what you want to eat. See? So the whole Seder really has one idea.
How to Kriyash my phone.
Ooh,
Kriyash.
that's a very good question. Answer it. Who can answer that? I once told you
I
about it.
can't, you told me, it wouldn't be fair, it wouldn't be fair if I gave the answer.
Yeah, it
If
wouldn't
you
be
don't
fair.
realize there's a creator, you can't.
What?
You don't need allowance, there's no one on top.
Okay, almost. The reason why Kriya Shema fits in, I once said, is because if you and I enter into an agreement, right, where we each, right, you and I have to do two things. One, we have to agree to agree, right? We have to agree that we both will have an agreement. The second thing is, what are the conditions of the agreement, right? So therefore, Rebbe, when he wrote all the halachas of Torah, Shas, right, he first had to talk about the agreement, right? But all the Mishnahs is the agreement itself. But when did we ever say we agree to agree? And that's Kriya Shema. One, there's a God, right? He's the only God. He's a king, right? Right? And he's our king, and we accept his sovereignty. There's the agreement. You accept the sovereignty, and you agree to his mitzvahs, his commandments. What are his commandments? Rest of Shas. Simple. And it's not, pulled, scratched, and, it's
So it's legitimizing the court.
correct.
It's not like it's a kangaroo court and who cares what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
legitimate.
legitimatizing the mitzvahs.
Right.
Because first I have to say that I agree. So Kriya Shema is that we agree to agree, that he is the king.
You accept the sovereignty.
Correct. And now, what was his sovereignty? His commandments. What are they? The rest of the whole Shas. That's why Kriya Shema is there. It's not a device that permits anything, but it certainly is the agreement. So it makes sense that Rebbe had to put that first. You see,
Because if you don't
And
have
the rest-
that, you have nothing.
If you don't have that, if you've never agreed to agree, what do we do with the terms? What do I need the mitzvahs for? I never agreed to agree to any of this. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Anyway, so that with organizing time is Sechta, but certainly the first idea, going back to the first Mishnah, you have the concept of, so we have 4 dates that are first days of an annual time period. Right? Okay. Now the Mishnah is now going to tell me which date corresponds to which halachic area. You see. So the first thing is called Melachim, kings. Now, that is obviously a one-word answer.
Yeah.
Enough time. By the way, next week there is no Shiur. I won't be here. I need to break myself. So but the following week we will continue. So next week there is no Shiur, and the following week we will continue. Okay, am I got that? I announced, by the way, next week there's no Shiur,
That's
and the next
August
year,
4th.
August 4th, there is no Shiur. Then the following week is what? August 11th? There will be a Shiur. Okay?
We shift the days.
What was that?
We shift the days.
Shift the days.
Yeah.
So what is Melachim? What
No
is
Shiur
Melachim?
just next week.
What's Melachim? Kings. What's Pshat? What do kings mean?
What kind of kings?
They're probably referring to human kings.
Well, yeah. Well, it's Jewish kings.
Maybe Jewish kings.
But what does Melachim mean? You guys look at the Mishnah. What does it mean? That what?
That we count.
Aleph Nisan is kings. That's what it says. What does it say?
That's how we count
The what?
the years of which a king reigns.
Okay, so Aleph Nisan, right, is the first day, right? And it's really an anniversary date, okay? Because that's how you count, right? If you want to count the number of the years of a Jewish king's reign, how do we count it, right? What's the normal way? Forget about Aleph Nisan. What should be the way?
When he takes reign.
Exactly. It's called the Day of Ascension, when he ascended the throne.
Correct.
That should have been, or the Day of Coronation, when he was coronated, that means, right? And so on, right? That should be and then a year later, that should be the anniversary date, and that's considered 1 year. Along came Chazal and said, no, we do not want the Day of Ascension. What we want is we will create a rabbinical date that constitutes a year for him. So even if he became a king in the Rosh Chodesh Adar, as soon as you hit Nisan, bam, a year has passed. It's an arbitrary designation
It's
for a
through the
year
means-
or for an anniversary date. Consequently, that anniversary date is now used as the number of the years of his reign. What they did is they changed the anniversary date. It's not the day of ascension or coronation. It is Aleph Nisan. That's what they did. They changed the anniversary date. Got it? And therefore, subsequently, every, so
Why
that's
do
really what it is.
So
It's all it is this, if you want to determine the number of years of a Jewish king's reign, you need to consider that Aleph Nisan is the date that signals the beginning of a new year.
Why'd they do that? What's
That
that
seems-
about?
That's-
Said because of
Now-
It seems very
Shalom
similar
Malchus.
to what you were saying
There's
about
the rest of
astrology.
as part of that,
The same,
the Mishna is now going to say, what's the nafkamina? Who cares? What, who cares for that?
Shtar.
Who?
A star. If a star isn't native right, it's
So-
possible.
There's a certain sequence here, or else you get very confused.
Uh-huh.
So the answer to that, right, is if I want to date a document through, in terms of years, not only day and month, right, but years, I need to use the rabbinical date, not the ascension date. So if you have a document, right, where let's say somebody sold somebody to something else, when was it done, which date? So in the old days, what they used to say, let's say the first day of Tammuz, let's say, in the 3rd year of the king's reign. That's what they used to do. So that 3rd year has to be according to what? Has to be according to the rabbinical date, anniversary date, not the ascension anniversary date.
So you could be king for 2 days, but it's a year.
One
You,
day.
exactly,
Even
yeah,
one day.
Rabbi,
yeah,
this
exactly.
sounds very similar to what you were explaining about astrology and the ability, like the same pattern. In other words, there's the real time and then there's the time established by a base day for
Yes,
whatever reason.
yeah, but that's not something with hashpos.
No, well, in a sense it is.
Well,
because-
they're changing,
In other words, that exists, that ability to do that exists.
yeah, they're not changing time, they're just changing the number of years. They're saying you cannot code years based on his ascension, his anniversary date, ascension, coronation. You need to use the date of the rabbinical date. And they learned that from Sukkim, Shlomo Melech. Whatever, but that's what they did. The real question is like, is there any practical, and the answer there is.
Yes.
What is that? So we know that this is the date used for documents. What happens if there's a loan document? You lend money to somebody, right? And you put down, I lent you money, let's say Rosh Chodesh Shvat, right? Or let's say Rosh Chodesh Sivan, right? I lent you money Rosh Chodesh Sivan. But which year? So you need to put the year using Aleph Nisan and not the day of ascension of that king. You see, what happens if you don't?
It's Shtar Mukta.
Yeah, but what's a Shtar Mukdam? What?
It's also
What is a Shtar
a
Mukdam?
misstated
Yeah,
star.
the
She
star.
dated ahead.
No,
And a star,
what is a Shtar Mukdam? Well, technically you're right, but like, why is that no good?
a star, take for example, a star halva, a star for a loan.
Wait, let's go slow. You need, see, it can be very confusing. You need to sort out information sequentially, or else it's like a big, what are you talking about, Take the time to, like I did with time, sort out the sequence, then everything gels and becomes crystallized. This needs to be sorted out. So the first concept is what? That if you want to number the years of a Jewish king's reign, don't use his date of ascension. You need to use the rabbinical date, which is Aleph Nisan. That's the first idea. Second idea, that documents need dates. Yes? Okay? And the date that it should employ is the rabbinical date, not the ascension date.
But then you have
Yes?
one question.
Third idea.
You have to ask do you start when, if he's not Nissan first, right, do you start giving him a year right away?
Yes.
Or
Well, when,
do you wait until the Nissan first and give him the year
No,
then?
Nissan is ready the second.
no,
year.
Nisan already is the second year. If a guy became the king 2 days before Rosh Chodesh Nisan,
Yes?
2 days later, 1 year has passed, so you have to write on the document in the second year of the king.
Got it. So
Sounds
the idea,
amazing, huh?
yeah, so in other words is,
So
Right
for those
before Nisan.
people
Synchronous.
who want to make sure that, they've reigned many years, this is the way to go. Now, so that's, the next idea is a document which is a loan document. Yes? Now, what, a loan document has to be dated. Yes? Okay, it has to be dated again the same way. Now, by the way, there were different ways of dating documents. You could date a document by the creation year, 3,281. You could date it that way. But if you dated it using the years of a king's reign, it had to be the rabbinical. Didn't mean you couldn't use another dating system. You could use the creation dating system.
There was a period
And
of
some
time
people
when they
use the
did it.
Persian. There's a whole Persian dating system. Whatever, the Seleucid Persians, or whatever, and so on. But if you dated it based on the Jewish king's reign, who was reigning at that time, you need to use Aleph Nisan. Now, you had a loan document, correct? Okay. So therefore, you date the king's reign based on the date of Aleph Nisan. Great. Okay. Now, what is a loan document? It assumes that you're going to repay it. Big assumption, right? But it assumes you'll be repaid. What happens if you don't pay a loan? Then you've defaulted. If you default on a loan, means you don't pay the money, what does the malva do? So the malva has, now with the creation of a loan, automatically the loiva's property becomes liened to the malva. Liened, L-I-E-N, right? It's called shibud, right? So in case of default by the loiva, the borrower, the malva can go right to his property and say, hey, I'm taking the value of the property based on the value of the loan. Got it? That's the concept of a lien. What's even more interesting is what happens if after the date of the loan, the loiva sold his properties to some other guys after the loan, right? So the malva can go over to those guys, the buyers, and say, excuse me, it's true you bought it, but I have a lien that predates your sale. I'm taking your property, too bad. That's called a shibud nechosim, right? That's a lien, which not only allows you to take his property as payment, if there's a default, but allows you to take the property out of the hands of buyers who bought it after the lien, or rather after the loan itself. Got
Did they
it?
get compensation?
What was that?
They
No.
go back to the-
Yeah, no, well, they have to go running back to the loiva and say, excuse me, you need to give my money back. And the loiva gonna say, what the loiva's gonna say, money, what money? I spent it on, I took a year's vacation in Hawaii. The old story. Now, what happens, however, now when does the lien date start?
From the date of the
From
start.
the day of the start. We assume that the transaction date or the loan date, right, is the same as the document of the star. That's a big assumption, and if the lien starts then. The problem is, what happens if instead of writing Aleph Nisan, or the year, you counted the years of a king based on Aleph Nisan, right, you counted it based on his ascension,
That's not the whole thing.
right? Actually, I really should leave that out. You need to know this. What happens if a guy,
It's the second year.
the
and
malva,
it's the
let's
first.
say, he wants to play around, so what he does is he predates. If that loan document is predated, let's say that the loan was made, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, right? And the date on that, right, is Rosh Chodesh Adar, that would give the malva power to go back before the loan and rip out the properties of buyers. No good. That's called a shtar mukdam, where the date of the shtar mukdam precedes the loan itself. No good. But if it's after, if the loan document date, right, is post the loan, then the leivers, the malvers, so that shtar is good, even though he obviously can't.
He delays the collection.
Correct, yeah, and so on. Now, the question is, so we know we have the concept of shtar mukdam and mu'ucha, right? We have the concept of a document, a loan document,
Pre or post.
right? We have a date on that document. We have the concept of payment, default, lien, and even lien on the buyers. All that is included in a document of loan. But obviously, when the lien starts depends on your date. So if you have a loan document where the date of that document, right, is not the date of Aleph Nisan, because you're using the years of a king, right? But instead, you're using the years of Jewish kings when he ascended to the throne. Bad news. Why? Because when a king, imagine a king ascends to the throne on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, yes? And all of a sudden you make a loan, right, Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Here's the problem. According to the document date, right, we assume, well, according to the day of ascension, which is Rosh Chodesh Shvat, right, and the loan was made Rosh Chodesh Sivan, right? So the years of a king, right, is really the second year. But according to the day of ascension, he's still within his first. You see. So the problem then is, right, is that if you use the day of ascension, that date, right, will always be less than the date of the Rabbanim. And therefore a guy, so it's a guy, the day of ascension is Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Right? And then he made the loan, and then the Malva laid the loan on Rosh Chodesh Sivan. So here's the problem. And now he's got to put a date on this document. So what date does he put down? He puts down on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, right? In the first year of this king. But the problem is, really, according to Rabbanan, it's a second year. But everybody thinks that this is a rabbinical year. So therefore, they say, the first year, that means I can get all I can rip out the property from all those buyers, right? That predated this. So therefore, that's a shtar mukdam. So therefore, what happens is, so therefore, Malach means kings. That's how you date, how you number the years. But the problem is that in a loan agreement, that date must be the rabbinical date, or else it can be, and that's what it's assumed to be.
Yes.
And if you do it by the date of ascension, it comes out that you will have predated the lien before the loan, no good. And therefore that gives the Malva an unfair advantage of being able to go back to buyers before the loan even happened and rip out their properties. That's called a shtar mukdam, and it's puzzle. So what Chazal said is, we penalize you if you don't do the rabbinical date on a loan document, right? Instead you do the day of ascension. The Malva cannot in any way, even with
Can't
default,
even collect the original loan.
he cannot collect the properties. He can't collect cash, the guy has, but he cannot go back to properties at all, even after the loan date.
So,
It's complicated, you see? But again, whenever you look at something which is complicated, right, what does complexity mean? It means many things. The problem is, most people don't delineate clearly the items in a complex idea, and therefore it's fuzzy. You see, what you need to do is look at that simply and clearly go through each item. You see, rabbinical date, ascension date, document date, loan document date, you know what I'm saying? Repayment, default, lien, which starts at the same time as the loan. Now, question is, right, what happens if I use the rabbinical date, or rather I use the ascension date instead of rabbinical? That will always mean that the date of the document precedes the loan date, because we think it's the rabbinical date, and that makes the shtar mukdam. And they said, this makes the shtar mukdam, you cannot take from the property even in default. Too bad. You see? So it's a penalty. It means if you're going to write a loan document, you must write the year of the king according to the rabbinical date and not the day of ascension. If not, you are penalized. It becomes a shtar mukdam. We consider shtar mukdam because really it's not. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the Day of Ascension. I mean, it's true. It isn't the first year of the king. But according to Al Takana, it's not the first day of the king, it's the second year. Of first year, second year, you see? You know, because you guys want to make it the second year, I have to be penalized? The answer is yes, and so on. So that's the penalty. By forcing you to abide by the year of a king, based on the rabbinical date, right? You now have to be very careful, and so on, you know. I'm wondering what happens if it says in the loan document, you use the Day of Ascension, right? But you write down, this year is not the rabbinical date, is the Day of Ascension.
Yeah, that's-
So you clearly indicate, listen, don't assume anything. You know, or so most you could say, I violated the Takon of the Chachamim, but I clearly indicated that this is not the rabbinical date, it's the Ascension date. I wonder what the halacha would be.
That's
It's an
what,
interesting question, you know?
because it
Would you
all,
also be penalized?
it rests on.
Probably not, yep.
A social agreement, essentially. In
Oh,
other words,
yeah.
They made the, now, where did that come from?
Well, the Chazal decided to do that because of...
Everybody thought that way already.
So show
This is the way they were behaving, this is the way they,
Well, they learned it from Shlomo Melech. Whatever, that's
Yeah,
the way
okay.
to get to Gemara. Why, you know, first of all, why did they pick Aleph Nisan? You know, and so on. You know, what's the origin or the derivation of all this? Our concern is that you need to date documents when you're using the year of a king, you need to use Aleph Nisan and not the Day of Ascension. And if you do use the Day of Ascension, especially on a loan document, the lien feature of the document is null and void. Now, all that is in the word Melachim.
yeah.
That's the astounding part about this. It's all in one word, kings. Wow. You know, from that word kings until this, loan documents and liens and default and mukdam and mucha, you know, it's a long way off and so on. But okay, listen, that's what it is.
How do we explain, because they said that.
Well,
they
my
made-
emphasis here is don't be frightened on one word. You need to unravel the complexity by slowly sorting it out in a sequence. That's how you do it.
How does that relate back to Aleph Tishrei, which is the entire central idea of
Because
the...
Aleph Tishrei,
Yes,
it happens to be itself a date that starts a new year for other halachic areas. So once they did Aleph Tishrei as the first day of a year for other halachic areas, they included the other 3 dates, Agav.
It's like a tangent,
It's
a related
it's-
tangent?
Yes, it's a related tangent, correct, yeah.
Would be democratic.
Because once they're talking about Aleph Tishrei as a date for halachic areas, a New Year date as halachic areas, well, it's been in the other 3, you see? But it's still Aleph Tishrei, that's the center. And then Rosh Chodesh, you know, Judgment Day, Aleph Tishrei. Kiddush HaChodesh is a month, first day of a month, Aleph Tishrei. You see, all of them are Aleph Tishrei and so on. So that organizes the entire Masechta. But that's how it would be
but
looked
it throws you off. As far as finding the central idea going inductively,
Yeah,
that information, by including it, will throw you off not to think that it's...
yeah,
Aleph
but
Tishrei.
that happens all the time.
So then what do you do?
What?
Then what do you do?
You come to this class.
No.
Do.
What do we do next
What else
week?
do you do?
What do we do next week? So in other words,
Next week,
yeah, you go back up, you find out that you're all-encompassing.
you know what you do
central
next week?
Yeah.
Everybody here goes to the Koisel. And you pray to God and say, please bring Kessin back. But that's the lesson here. Don't be afraid of a word. It's complex, which means there's a lot of stuff going on in that one word. Sort it out clearly. And then once you've sorted it out, sequence it. And then it becomes clear.
You have to be
Then
clear
you're able
which
to
Kessin you
analyze.
want
What was
back.
that?
You have to be clear which Kessin you want back.
Yeah.
and what date you want them back, whether it's from Nissan, Aleph.
But that's what you do, just like I did with time. You see, because everybody here has assumptions, but you really never thought about the original assumptions. You see, month and all this, you know. But what I did is I went back to the beginning, and the beginning is time. That's what I did. It's passage. It's a continuum. You want to locate a time point. To do that, you need to measure it. To measure something, you need units. Units, astronomical units, phenomenon. You see? And that's how we begin. That's the origin of month, year, you see. But since Chazal have the ability to move the first day away from an astronomical event called a new moon, so then what we realize is that they're the ones who assign the first day. That means what their job is they have to figure out which month goes on the cycle of days, because it doesn't have to align itself with the new moon, you see? So their job is to figure out on the cycle of days which is the new month. So the Goyim could say, well, this month, July, right, on which cycle of days is it, depends on what? It's the sun, the solar, they divided the 12 and all that kind of stuff, you know? And we decide, of course, based on the appearance of the new moon, and if not, then it's the next day. But like I said, there's an urgency to align the rabbinical first Rosh Chodesh with the astronomical Rosh Chodesh. It's a very important concept that you can call Shabbos. It's astounding, isn't it? You know, but that's what it is. You know. Again, you have to sort it out slowly and go back and answer what's the first concept that introduces everything else. You know, and the answer is time. And then you begin to work its way. Okay, then you arrive at the Kiddush HaChodesh as a process. You see, to designate the first date of a month on which day in the cycle of days. That's all it is. You see.
That means that in 1 year, Tishrei can be 30 days, and in another year, Tishrei could be 29 days.
It could be, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Which means that the years and how we adjust it through an extra month can get very misaligned if things happen in a certain year.
Well, it can never go more than 1 day.
Right.
The second day automatically is going to become a Chodesh.
Right.
So it can never be that far off.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it would be interesting if the Torah gave Chazal the option of any day. Well, you want the guy? Give him in the
You'd be way off.
Oh, wow. You know, that would be really horrendous. You know, but we discussed that. We discussed also, which is very important, the hashpah, the hashkafa behind Kiddush HaChodesh. You know, and what Chazal can do, they can actually alter the spiritual forces that apply itself to each day. They can actually shift it over to another day. It's astounding.
Isn't that why the Greeks wanted to uproot, that was one of the things they wanted to uproot? They took away the ability to they asr Chadash Chodesh. Wasn't that one of the things? Bris Milah, Chadash Chodesh.
And Shabbos. Yeah,
Shabbos.
yeah. But there's something also which is very important, which I really have to mention before you go, you know. Imagine Tishrei, right? You have Tishrei, right? First day of Tishrei. Okay, the question of the Aleph Tishrei is, which is a date, right? Which day is that? So, right? So imagine it's Sunday, you know? So it can either be Sunday, the appearance of the moon is Sunday, right? And for whatever reason they decided to move it to Monday. You realize what they did?
Impacted Yom Kippur.
Exactly. They moved Yom Kippur. So if the Tishrei was Sunday, right? Then if you would have, right? And Sunday, then Yom Kippur was a day early, right? Instead they said you can eat that day because it's the next day.
Really
So that means what you really should have got, chorus. For eating, you don't get chorus
Till the next day.
till the next day. That's astounding. They shifted the whole halachas. We're talking here about Yom Kippur and Sukkot. That means you don't have to bring lulav and esrog today because it's really the 15th. It's the next day. Wow. So they're in a certain sense they're actually telling God when we will observe the mitzvah. I mean, they're telling you know, we will decide when the mitzvah applies. It's not today, it's the next day. That's astounding. And you talk about the mitzvahs as being central to the whole hashpah of the bria. The whole universe surrounds itself with the mitzvahs. You know, Yom Kippur and so on. So it's not just the hashpah of every day, it's the hashpah of the Yom Tovim. They can move Yom Tovim. It's astounding. And we're talking about Yom Tovim, which is chorus and all that stuff. Right? Chorus, matzah, moro, you know, all this stuff. It's astounding what they can do. But it's interesting. And I'll close with this. They can move a date, but they cannot move Shabbos. Keep that in mind. You can't say, well, tomorrow is Saturday. No way. Which is interesting. You cannot move Shabbos, but you can move a date.
Well, because Shabbos is out of time.
And and I will leave you to think about why.
It's much.
Why is it you can move a date, but you cannot move Saturday? You cannot move Shabbos. And the astounding thing, which the Kuzari brings down, by the way, one of the greatest proofs of the Torah is that the entire world celebrates Saturday, Shabbos, as the seventh day since Brias Olam. Because it would be very easy. First of all, the concept of a week, is arbitrary. There's no astronomical phenomenon that is the same thing as a week. No such thing as a week. A week is a fraction of a month. They could have made a week for 4 days each. Every week is 4 days. You know what I'm saying? So there'll be 7 weeks in 1 month. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that would have great if you're unemployed. All those checks. I get a check every week. There's 7 weeks. Why not?
Did Ma'aseh Bereshis establish a week?
Yes, exactly. But the amazing thing is that imagine. Here's what would have been the killer for Jews, right? Imagine we celebrated from Bereshis. We are literally every 7th day from the first Shabbos, right? But we are exiled among Goyim. Imagine if they had not kept our Saturday. We would have gotten confused, wouldn't we?
Oh, yeah.
We would have lost Shabbos eons ago. We have no idea when Shabbos is because we're exiled in the nations. We're with these guys, and for business purposes, for all purposes, you got to keep their calendar, right? Guess what? Everybody would have forgotten when Shabbos is. Who would have kept track? Yeah, that's one of the nisim, and the Rosh Hashanah obviously knew that. He says, "Listen, I know I'm going to exile you guys." You guys are going to go with the nations, right? And they're going to have all kinds. Look, even their month is different than our months, right? They're not the same months, Okay, so we play around with months, but you can't play around with Shabbos. So we're doomed. And the Rosh Hashanah said, "Don't worry, I will make sure that the 7th day in the entire world is accurate. So no matter where you go, you guys keep Shabbos." It's really astounding.
When you say that their months are based upon the...
See, but there we have a problem by Shabbos. One thing, what we do have a problem with Shabbos, is where does Saturday begin on the planet? That's the whole concept of the international dateline. That's a whole different headache. It's fine, it's a 7th day, but maybe you could tell me where on the planet it begins?
See, Rosh Chodesh, we know, the Molid is here.
Yeah, because you see the moon here, exactly, yeah.
The Molid could be any
So there's-
place, but we see the moon.
No, no.
Well, Yerushalayim, yeah,
The
no,
official
Chodesh.
Molid is always Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
The Molid could be any place in the world, but when you see the new moon in Yerushalayim.
That's when Chodesh is
In
Yerushalayim.
Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah,
That's different.
yeah. But the international, but remember one thing.
That's arbitrary.
Remember-
Greenwich line is arbitrary.
Well, the international dateline is arbitrary.
Right,
Where does the day begin on the planet?
right,
Because the planet rotates over and over again.
right.
So, where does Friday end and Saturday begin on this planet?
Mhm.
And, so there's all kinds of arguments. If it begins in Yerushalayim, some people hold it begins 6 hours later in Japan, which is really,
Right. That was the whole problem with the Mir Yeshiva.
some people hold, the Mir Yeshiva. Yeah, that's the problem is when is Saturday? We know what the 7th day is always Shabbos, but when is Saturday? Where does it begin on the planet? So when you go to Japan, there's a problem there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so we will meet again in 2 weeks. Yes?
It's not the Shiur.
Overtime.
It's-
Okay.
Incredible.